Hi guys, let's talk about why we care about aliens and Bostrom's idea of the Great Filter. Okay, so we have all this science fiction about aliens, we have all of these fantasies about aliens, we have dreams about aliens. Um, why are we so fixated on the possibility of life or intelligence elsewhere in the universe? And why are we so fixated, in particular, on the idea of developing a relationship with that life or intelligence? Well, there are a bunch of reasons, which Eric Schwitzgebel considers in the blog post that you guys read. So maybe we'll become less lonely if we um, discover alien life elsewhere. Maybe discovering alien life will have a kind of spiritual effect on us, like it'll sort of shock us out of our tendency to think of ourselves as, all important or as at the center of the universe. Maybe learning about alien life will teach us about the different forms that life can take, or will teach us about the different ways that living stuff can arise out of non-living stuff, the problem of abiogenesis. Maybe when we meet another alien civilization, they'll want to cooperate with us and share their technology and ideas with us. Okay. I want to note here that we can get a lot of these things out of learning about non-human animals and plants right here on Earth, right? Non-human plants and animals can also make us feel less lonely, can also tell us about different ways of life, can also shock us out of our sense that we're the center of the universe. So maybe when we're so interested in aliens on other planets, we should be a little bit more interested about what's going on at home. But I'll set that aside. On the other hand, maybe we don't care about the existence of alien life so much as we care about contacting or sort of sharing ourselves with, or information about ourselves with aliens. So, a lot of people think that your life is going to be more meaningful. Your life will matter more if you're remembered for longer, if you leave more of a lasting trace on Earth. This is the way that, or perhaps outside of Earth, this is the way that a lot of people sort of think about their ambitions in life. They want to leave a legacy of some sort. And so maybe we want to contact alien civilizations because we want to leave the right sort of legacy. We want to leave some sort of trace that we were here. We could ask about this too. Is this the right way of thinking about what it is to leave a meaningful life? Is a meaningful life a life that leaves a trace, a life that people will know about in the future? Well, I hope not, because most of us won't leave a trace. Most of us will be forgotten relatively shortly after we're dead. Okay, so that's where Bostrom comes in. Bostrom is trying to give a very hard-headed, very pragmatic reason to care about whether there is not just life on other planets, but the remnants of life on other planets. Okay, so let's go through Bostrom's argument a bit. First, Bostrom notices that for all of our efforts to detect life on other planets, we haven't found any sophisticated alien civilizations yet. And there are any number of reasons why that might be the case. But he thinks the reasons why we haven't seen sophisticated, technologically advanced alien civilizations on other planets is because they don't exist. If they did exist, he says, it would be relatively easy for them to colonize other planets in a relatively short span of time, and so they would. And they would leave some visible trace of their existence out in the world. So the fact that we haven't seen these visible traces means that they are not real. Okay, so we could question this, but let's accept this piece of reasoning for the sake of argument. So the reason why we can't see the visible traces of alien civilizations is because they don't exist. Okay. Well, then the question arises: why don't they exist? Why aren't there technologically advanced civilizations all over the universe or all over the observable universe? And so if we're going to answer that question, what we need to do is we need to find whatever it is that's preventing alien life from reaching a certain level of, from arising in the first place, or from reaching a certain level of technological sophistication. And so he calls this thing, whatever it is, that prevents alien life from reaching a certain level of development, the great filter. So the great filter is whatever prevents alien life from becoming technologically sophisticated enough to be visible or observable to us. Okay. So then the question is, what's the great filter? Okay. Well, there are two possibilities, he says. The great filter could be something that is in our evolutionary past. It could be, so to speak, a hurdle that we've already jumped over. Or it could be something that's in our evolutionary future. Thing that, so if it's in the past, well, that could be any number of things, right? It could be, as we mentioned briefly in the last video, the problem of abiogenesis. It could be just a sort of incredibly rare, just for statistical reasons alone or something like that, occurrence for living stuff to arise out of non-living stuff on a planet. So, in the early days of planet Earth, there was some soup of chemicals and energy, and it could just be that the physical processes that led that soup of chemicals to turn into, single-celled organisms is just a very rare process, okay? It could be that the great filter is after abiogenesis, but still before us. So maybe the evolution of multicellular organisms, like us, creatures that are made of more than one cell. It could be that that's extremely rare. It could be that the evolution of any kind of intelligence or communication or altruism is extremely rare. It could be that the evolution of sexual reproduction is extremely rare. Okay, there are a lot of possible ways that we could, there are a lot of possible great filters out there. On the other hand, the great filter could be in our future. Well, what would that mean? That would mean that any civilization that becomes at least as technologically sophisticated as us will burn out, will destroy itself or be destroyed eventually. Well, what would that look like? Maybe it looks like a pandemic, like the coronavirus, just deadlier. Maybe it looks like climate change. Maybe it looks like nuclear war. Maybe it looks like an asteroid. Maybe it looks like violent conflict or political repression. Okay. What you hope is that the great filter, if it exists, is in our past. Because if it's in our future, then we're fucked, right? If it's in our future, then that means that human civilization is not going to stick around as long as we would like it to stick around. Okay. What does this have to do with alien life? Well, remember, Bostrom thinks that there is no extant, that is to say, currently existing, alien civilization of any kind of technological sophistication in the observable universe. He's already given his reasons to believe that. So Bostrom is concerned about what we should think if we discovered the remnants of alien life, the fossils, for example. And what Bostrom says is that the more complicated, the more, so to speak, evolutionarily developed those fossils are, the further and further into sort of course of evolutionary time, the great filter must occur. So for example, if you encountered, this is a silly example, but suppose that you encountered on Mars, we dug under the surface a little bit, and we found the ruins of a civilization that was just as technologically sophisticated as us. This would give us very good reason to think that the great filter is going to kick in, sometime around now. That is to say, that the thing that prevents alien civilization from reaching a point of technological development is that civilizations like our own don't stick around, that they tend to be destroyed. And this would be very bad news. Now, but even if you discovered a fossil record that was sort of a little bit in our past, it would still sort of bump the great filter further and further into the future. And the further and further the great filter sort of is from the origins of life. That is to say, the great filter could be all the way at abiogenesis, or it could be in somewhere in our near or not so near future. And the more complex the forms of alien life, remnants of alien life that you discover on other planets, well, the more that narrows it down to the great filter being, in closer and closer to our future. But of course, that's what we don't want, right? Because if the great filter is in our future, that means that human civilization isn't going to stick around for very long. So this is Bostrom's reason for thinking that it would be bad news if we discovered remnants of life on other planets. Just to be clear, Bostrom isn't saying that we shouldn't look for those remnants. Maybe we should look for those remnants. It would be important to know that human civilization won't stick around very long, if in fact that's the case. But he's saying if we found these remnants, or if these remnants actually existed, that would be bad news for us. Okay. Now, there are a lot of different ways that you could object to Bostrom's argument. You might think, well, if we found for example, that the great filter was something like nuclear war, well, then we could do something to prevent that. We could destroy our stockpile of nuclear weapons. Or if we found that the great filter was climate change, well, then we could, get our act together and finally convince the people of the world to do something about climate change, the governments and corporations and individuals of the world to do something about climate change. Okay, so maybe you'd think that it wouldn't actually be bad news to discover that the great filter is in the future, because we have agency, we have choices, we have power over our future, and we can do something about that. Okay. Another possibility, of course, is that Bostrom is wrong, that maybe we don't see alien civilizations because we haven't looked hard enough. So it could be that alien civilizations are microscopic. It could be that they are very, very far away. After all, we've only been able to observe planets in other solar systems, like literally at all, in the last few years, since like I was a teenager or something. Our technology for detecting life on other planets or in other solar systems isn't very sophisticated. It might become more sophisticated over time. Lastly, it could be that we're looking for life sort of in the wrong forms. We are solid objects. We've got a lot of water inside of us, but we're, solid. And we're mostly made of carbon. But you could, at least the non-watery parts are mostly made of carbon. But it could be that other organisms out there have very different biochemistry, or exist in a different phase of matter, that they're liquid or gas or plasma or something like that. And if we're not looking for life in those forms, then we're not looking in the right places. Okay, that's that.